Broad Street Review podcast, Philly's online hub for arts, culture, and commentary, where art and ideas meet. I am your host, Darnell Radford. On today's podcast, playwright Emily Acker, who you may know as a founding member of Orbiter 3, talks about Azuka Theatre's world premiere of Boycott Esther, an urgent response to the Me Too movement. We discuss the pros and cons of social media and conversations that shape the piece. Here's my interview with Emily Acker. I'm at the Proscenium at the Drake, and I'm here with Azuka Theatre Company to talk about Boycott Esther, which is written by playwright Emily Acker, who is here right in front of me.
Hi.
Emily, welcome to Rep Radio.
Thanks so much. Excited to be here.
Yeah, so many people will be familiar with your name, but tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I was raised outside Philly and came back home after graduating college, and shortly thereafter I was one of the founding members of Orbiter 3. Was working within Orbiter and outside of it as a freelance playwright, and eventually got an opportunity in television and working for the Weinstein Company, and was developing a remake for a pilot sitcom for them for a little over a year when the initial sort of expose dropped, and the show was put on hold just like everything else at the company, and then sort of just slowed down to a full halt at a certain point. And thus sort of started the inspiration for Boycott Esther. Everything on stage is completely fictional, but is inspired by sort of my close proximity to sort of the catalyst of Me Too. Yeah, I wouldn't say that the play is like investigating how we should feel about Me Too, as it is more an investigation of our interface with the internet and how that stifles our interface with one another as people, and how the opposite of stifles, that what are the incredible connections that we can make, and and the flip side of that, what do we miss, what lacks nuance, what do we do too quickly and not think through a process before posting our first thought that comes to us online.
Yes. And
so that's really what the play investigates. As a young person, as a young writer, I am really fascinated by the intersection of theater as a live art form and the digital world, and what are the ways that we can represent the digital world on stage when so much like video seems like a different medium, a medium that is maybe not meant for the stage. So how do we sort of adapt the theater with the times and the world around us? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Social media is like, I feel like everybody has a love-hate with social media because, like you said, it does have its pros, but it has a lot of cons. And sometimes, and almost just like anything that has cons, period, they tend to take center stage a lot more. If you're a small theater company, social media really helps spread the word about your work and helps you build a following and continue a conversation. But then if you make a comment about, hey, did you hear this on randomanySite.com? That is like, how did you even find that website to begin with? And here you are sharing some content from them without validating to see if this is part of a greater conversation. Then you ultimately have to, you could potentially have to backtrack, or you call out your friends. Like, I don't know what that website is, but you shouldn't share that. Or like someone posted something about a judge going to jail for wrongfully imprisoning African-American men. But it was posted in 2011. So, but that person had posted it yesterday or the other day. And it was like, did you even click through? It says right on the front page, and there's even a disclaimer. This has been going out. And so I don't understand why, in their very official way saying, I'm not sure how this is continuing to gain traction, but here is the actual post from then. And then you ultimately have to find a nice way to say, yeah, that was a while ago, but yeah, I mean, still,
Right.
I'm glad that happened. You're not trying to necessarily put people on blast.
Exactly.
But and then so for the Me Too movement, the initial conversation that came out, the solidarity of liberals, I would say, and then the frustration of the people who don't want to be a part of the conversation are, all that sort of blurs in and kind of muddies the overall message. So it ends up being problematic as well.
Yeah, it's definitely complicated.
Yeah. So you touched on it, but tell us about Boycott Esther.
Sure. Boycott Esther. The play is sort of inspired, like I said, by my time with the Weinstein Company. So it's about a woman who's just out of college, very young, kind of quirky young woman who has a impressive following as an online influencer. Sort of a mixture of sort of feminist, young person, activist, influencer of sorts. Which again, completely fictional. I am not this person. And so her account and her sort of work is recognized by a large sort of Hollywood mogul and his TV development, his executive who works for him. And they are, over the course of the show, turning her content into a television show. They're developing it until he becomes enmeshed in a sexual assault allegation scandal, and her show is sort of put on hold. The play, the heart of the play sort of is that he reaches out to her several months after, like, everything sort of dies, sort of in not a last-ditch effort, but as someone who sort of is more plugged into the internet and how it has brought him down, and sort of reaches out to her to be like, hey, can I meet with you? Like, can you speak to in any way how someone comes back from something like this? And she doesn't really equivocate. She's like, you can't, like, we don't want to hear from you. Yeah. But the moment of meeting with this person face to face, someone that she's never really seen before face to face, that, like, she sees the humanness of him, his remorse, perhaps, even if it is self-serving or whatever his questions are, she really looks into investigating deeply his questions and really trying to understand, like, what we do with these people, with these men, like, what happens now to these people. And just the very act of investigating anything that isn't, he is an abuser, we don't give him time, it's over, by just dipping into, like, seeking forgiveness perhaps, or trying to unfold, like, what is the next step here. She herself is attacked on the internet and by and large canceled by the internet. And so, yeah, I think what's interesting about the play, I mean, a lot of that might give away some stuff. I guess I probably should. I should probably find, like, a party line of some kind. But yeah, so. But I would say that a lot of what's interesting about the play for me is that it presents more questions than it does answers. It doesn't. It obviously says, like, abusers are wrong. Me Too, like, solidarity with Me Too. But I think that every single person who sees this play will come away with a different reaction. It will start a conversation in a way, depending on how you plug into, like you said, of, like, that range and spectrum of sort of, I don't know, what is relatable to you. Yeah. And so that's sort of the hope for me is to engender conversation about what's going on. Similarly, or just the other things I'm excited about, as I said about this play, is investigating what theater can do as a medium blending with, like, the internet, the digital space. And so in a lot of my writing, I'm really fascinated by, like, that question just from a craft standpoint. Yeah. And so there's a lot of really cool things where the internet is of itself a character in the play, and we're trying to use a lot of digital design that still feels authentic to the theater. And that will be maybe a lifelong pursuit, but this is definitely takes a big stab at it. Yeah, and then in general, I mean, I am really excited about seeing like a deeply flawed young woman on stage. I think so. It's really hard. I can't tell you the countless amount of feedback where like, oh, I don't relate to her. She's not likable or whatever it is for any, female character. And so getting the opportunity, and Alison Ormsby does such a beautiful job portraying her, but getting the opportunity to put someone on stage who like is problematic and maybe mediocre, and like having that be our protagonist feels just genuine and correct, and also like a step forward in like what we are actually seeing on stage, who we're seeing on stage. So I'm excited to present her in all of her messiness.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like people have a mindset, especially when they walk into a theater. It's like, if this is the main character, the character is a hero, and aren't we supposed to love this character? And then they're conflicted if this character is flawed, like you say, and you're like, but do I agree with this character's flaws, and what does that say about me? And also, what social media tends to do is it very effortlessly forces us into corners.
Totally.
And,
there's such a binary.
Yeah, and then you end up having conversations you're in mixed company, and there is like, oh, there is absolutely no other explanation that can come out of any of your mouths except for this one, which happens to be mine, and then, but whenever they're challenged, then that's when it gets to be so questionable, and you're just like, I know there's a reason we're all friends, and it's not because we agreed on every little thing,
right.
But we should be able to have an honest conversation about these
It's
sides.
really fascinating because it's something that we complain about as users of the internet, but also something I think that we seek out. Like we present ourselves in a very singular way on the internet on purpose sometimes, especially like influencers who are trying to brand themselves in a certain way, right? Simultaneously, then we jump back at a response that lacks nuance, but it's a double-edged sword because we play into it all the same and just don't like it when it's coming back at you.
Yeah, exactly. So can you pinpoint the moment where you sort of put down one project and say, "This is my next project"? Sure. When can you? What was your thought process in the moment that this presented urgency?
Sure. Well, yeah. So it was sort of a perfect storm of the show was dying right in front of my eyes. My partner had just moved out of the country and my lease was up. And so it was like, and I was like, oh goodness, like, I don't know if I can keep living in New York. And simultaneously, this sort of harrowing movement is flooding our country. Every day there's a new person, public figure who's being accused of XYZ. And so a lot of people were always talking to me about it, just being like, well, do you know him? Like, do you work for him? And I don't really. The answer is no. Like, I did work for him, but no, I don't know him. No, I'm not close to this. But still, it kept coming up. And like all things as a writer, I just started to write it down. I had some pretty formative conversations with just friends about not necessarily a piece of theater, but what was happening and how, like, what are the more interesting questions than like, this man is a bad man. Like we can get past that and sort of what's deeper than that. And so spent a few months sort of just thinking about it. And then I wrote it over the course of, I think, 2 weeks. It just kind of was the story. I've never written something like so inspired by a personal experience, like directly, nor have I written something, I think, this realistic. And so it kind of just was like, oh, this is kind of easy. I should do this more often to just like, I kind of have an idea of what might happen next.
Yeah.
And then I sent the first draft to Mara Krause, who is like a fellow founder of Orbiter 3, one of my best friends, and she directs this show. And she has been instrumental in getting it to where it is now. And so she gave me some really smart notes, as she always does. some things like embarrassing, like, oh God, that was a bad, like, don't look at that. And so then we sort of worked through a second draft. Last spring, we had a reading at Theater Exile, which was super helpful. And then shortly after, Kevin Glackham was like, as you said, the urgency behind it was like, we should produce this now. Like, this speaks to so many people. I think something I'm excited about for this show and the audiences who come see the show is that if you've been paying attention even the slightest bit to the news over the past 2 to 3 years, this show will speak to you in some way, even if you've never stepped into a theater before. So I'm hoping that this can have impact outside of our theater community, arts community, general regular theater goers, but really anyone who, has been slightly paying attention for, recently in the news.
Yeah. Well, you touched on, Kevin's thought process after experiencing it. But I was interested in the men in and around this production.
Sure.
And it could be friends that you're having conversations with and so on. And if you could, how were the men around this affecting, not to make it all about men?
Yeah, no, it's a good question.
Only because there are interesting processes out there where there are people who are just absolutely, you know what, let's all listen intently and let's try to understand this whole thing. But then there are others who are just very frustrated by the fact that this is monopolizing time, and then everybody comes with these things that are like, well, this was in the past, so how do we just move forward? And it's like, well, we can't. This is now brought to light, so we've got to. Sure.
Yeah, I would say I can't think of a male perspective that wasn't super excited about the play or its message. Mm-hmm. In a more general sense, I would say that my personal view is that we should make time for all of those perspectives, because the more we actually listen to people and where they're coming from, the more we can just, I don't know, that outreach allows for true change. That's, I believe, in a very just base level. I think shutting out maybe antagonistic opinions it's a gut reaction I've had, sure, but it's not necessarily the helpful one. Mm-hmm. I believe too that change is incremental. I believe that a lot of things in the past, 25 years, even sooner, the way that, I sometimes relate it to the TV show The Office. That was on network television when I was in high school. Some of that has aged so poorly, so quickly, based on the type of humor that you can put out, in really broadband media. And so I think that the diplomatic thing is that you have to give people time. I don't think that we as liberals can hold antiquated views against each other, against other people, if they're willing to have a conversation and want to be folded in. It's very easy to be like, oh, you've thought this X thing in the past, or you have a reaction that isn't exactly like mine, and therefore we're not the same. You don't get it. And that's a reaction I've certainly had. I'm still implicating myself in this as well. But what's more useful is to say, let's talk about it. Let's figure out why you feel that way. Why, what is it about being raised in a different generation? Actually, not to get distracted, but actually, Mayor Buttigieg, I was listening to an interview with him from South by Southwest when he was talking about his sexuality and his husband, and was talking about the rate at which society has changed in some social issues, which he has directly benefited from. It's my life is exponentially better because I can do X, Y, Z, I can get married, all these things. That's incredible. How incredible is that? And he was speaking in Texas. He's like, and I also know that there are people in this room who are raised by people they love and trust, who were told them that homosexuality is wrong, that I'm going to go to hell, that, that you disagree with the way I live my life. And it's really hard to reconcile how quickly things have changed with this loving person in your life and just like that gap and wanting to kind of move into, no, this is fine. Like, this doesn't affect me, whatever. But loving this other, like loving this person with this other narrative. Yeah. And so it takes a very big person to like have that kind of open-mindedness and open-heartedness. But I think it's important that we continue to like break through some of like that partisan language and behavior to really just try to have more conversation with people.
True. We definitely get into those situations where the human makes a choice that is not becoming of ourselves, then we disown the human almost immediately.
That's right.
Instead of saying, well, you've done this wrong, or this doesn't appear to be right.
Right.
And here's like so many things that this is why we're having this conversation. But and maybe it is social media, we're just very easily ready to just write people off. Like, I mean, you talked about Mayor Pete, right. Kind of say the same thing about Bernie. It was like, you were all in love with Bernie, and now you don't have time for Bernie. Mm-hmm. Remember, if he had won, he would still be president. Mm-hmm. And now you don't have time for Bernie anymore. And so it's like,
it's really interesting. No, it's really interesting. And that's not to say that there's anything to equivocate about sexual assault. Like that's not what the play is about. That's not what I'm saying. But it does take a level of open-mindedness, I think, to make real change.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about Mara's in direction. Talk about the first. Talk about the first table read.
Sure.
And what was the error?
Sure.
And what were the thought process? Some of the conversations that were coming about.
Yeah. So the first ever table read wasn't with this cast. Stephen, who plays Barry Bloom, was the only person who was a part of that first table read. The first table read with this cast, I actually wasn't even there, but we have been developing it for a while. There's, it's the type of play that, because it is based on like a real life sequence of events and movement, that everyone sort of feels like they can relate to it in some way. But I think the thing that sticks out to me is it really is, for a long period within the show, a one-woman play. It's her and the internet, and she encounters people online, but no, there's no other actors with her there. And so it was really apparent just to hear Allison just go and just be the force behind the play, it was pretty awesome. She's pretty remarkable. So it was really cool.
Yeah. Thinking about that that hashtag, I don't see it too much anymore.
Me too.
Yeah. It doesn't mean it's not out there.
Yeah.
I just don't see it as much as I saw it before. But people were being very honest, in that moment. They had been given permission to sort of share that they can how they relate. And I feel like the way our news cycles go, they just we can almost, there's someone out there thinking, is this still a thing?
Right.
Is this still a thing?
Right.
Like, yeah.
I think what was so astounding about it was, first of all, there's so many things, but I think one of the things that struck me was this is something that so many women and female identifying people live with daily, that they just they're like, of course this is true. Yeah. And so seeing it in such like widespread was so shocking to some people and so regular for others. And so that was sort of fascinating to see that come to light. The other thing that I find incredible is just the power behind a large sum of people like pulling together. The fact that Weinstein is, indicted, I guess he's indicted now, or just charged rather, like that's wild. Yeah. That, considering who this man was and what he built and the institutions that he built, how incredible some of his movies are my favorite movies ever made. Like all of those things, there's a conversation about the art versus the man that the play addresses for sure, but that a collection of women who were powerless for decades against him together were able to actually bring him down in like a really effective way. And so it's definitely still happening. It's lost its momentum of the original sort of outcry, but it's definitely still there for sure. And I think I'm hopeful that it will continue to create change that it already has started to do.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, especially for our community, which, you know, I think the term woke is quite overplayed.
Definitely, yeah, for sure.
But it almost says that we just never knew any of this was going on. And I don't think that was necessarily the case. I feel like the thought process of many things that take on a mainstream focus, they're just now at the forefront.
Right.
Whereas before they were on the back burner. And I can think of a lot of, you know, the marginalization of minorities.
Absolutely.
How it's so foundational for so many people's lives that we just go,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
exactly. And I think it just takes that's one of the things that's great about the internet, the visibility that the internet provides when something like this actually gets pushed to the forefront and pushes into people's consciousness who otherwise wouldn't, access it, is a great boon to us. Simultaneously, then, like we've talked about, the backlash of that exists the same. So, it's wild.
Do you? So I used to ask before. What do you hope that people will take away from this experience? And then I started asking, what creates a sense of urgency to produce, and create some of the work that ultimately moves you in a certain direction. And I think I will return to that original question now. Like,
Sure.
What do you hope an audience takes away from this experience?
Sure. I guess I touched on it a little bit, but I think that I think it's about having a conversation that not everything is black and white, and even when it is, it's important to touch base with the humanity of a topic instead of focusing on the politics or the policy or the event itself.
Yeah.
I hope they laugh. It's funny. I should probably mention that, which allows it to be something that is approachable.
Yeah.
It's intentionally funny. And then there's just a larger conversation about the way we interact with the internet outside of Me Too. This applies to anything. When we use it to our advantage, when it can bring us down, how it's replacing other aspects of like human connectedness in our life. When will the backlash against the internet begin? I think it's already beginning.
Yeah.
That people are starting to turn away from these forms of connectedness in search for something else, something that we had once. So all of those things, for sure.
Yeah, I think yesterday was like a big deal for one of the larger social media platforms. Not going to give it any credit here because they don't sponsor. But it's funny how they are moving forward amidst all the, scandal that they have helped to create.
Yeah.
Just in business practice, trying to sustain themselves as organizations, like being, what we translate into is greed. And also, at the same time, sort of supporting us in a way in terms of like freedom of speech, which is
so complicated.
Which is why you can't just be on one side. Like somebody can be mad at this platform, but continue to contribute to that platform. And, I think we forget about the things that are really close to us. like I always kind of go back to a mother. You know, if there's like a mother loves you unconditionally, or should love you unconditionally, and there have been many stories where the mother's child is in a bad kind of way with the world, and the mother is still, you know, seeing that human being as their child,
Right.
and not necessarily ignoring what is going on, but just not erasing, you know, the love that they have for them.
Right.
And I think it's at least in terms of social media, we can kind of give the assumption that we are done in exchange for likes.
Yeah, for sure.
What, no heart emojis? Like, geez, I said I am done. Like, all caps, couple of periods, you know.
For sure.
We say all of those things when really I'm always wondering, like, what happened when you click send? Did you feel validated by that position, or do you know it's still gray?
Right.
But I'm gonna put this out into the air to just to you know exacerbate the situation a little bit further.
It's so real.
Yeah. So not to rush this off the stage because
Yeah.
we haven't even started previews yet. But what? So now that you've gotten this to this point,
Yeah.
how do you let this live while continuing to observe the world and plan what's next?
Yeah, I think that I think first it's like I have tremendous gratitude for everyone at Azuka and all my collaborators, a bunch of really, really smart people who are helping tell the story. Mm-hmm. And so this singular event feels particularly humbling for me. I started when I graduated college. Azuka gave me my first job as an intern, so like there's a full circledness to think that this moment will live on for me for a little bit. You know, the writing for me is it's ebb and flow of like solitude and then togetherness in a way that I enjoy. But hopefully we'll be able to see this on stage again soon. Working on other things. Taking some step back from some writing, doing some other things, just evaluating that kind of stuff of what is next. I don't have like a great answer. I think it's honestly definitely a work in progress for me. What?
Well, you're just going to be present
Yes.
for the time being.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I didn't say that to force your hand to think about something new, but yeah, I even feel when I ask that, it's like, why are we in a rush?
No, for sure. No, I definitely am working on other things.
It's
but nothing that I really know what it is yet enough to share and be articulate about it.
Well, we'll experience this, and then we'll see how many more people will get the opportunity to experience this. But you're in a great place.
Thank you so much.
Azuka is definitely one of those organizations where I can look back at so many pieces that have moved me or made me think in ways that I hadn't thought before. And the thing I love about regional theater is that there is enough time to have a conversation about what we just experienced instead of just saying, here it is, go. Thanks for your money. You know, it's just like, if you have time, we're going to unpack this for another 15 minutes here.
Totally. And not just to plug Azuka even more, I think that their commitment to a pay-what-you-decide ticketing system really changes who gets to come and see theater in a way that's really important to me. The show, I think, speaks to young people, which is not always the demographic of who you see in the theater. Yeah. It takes place in present day. It takes place online and in forums that maybe are more relatable to a person under 50 than not. And so it is for everyone, absolutely. But the taking away the barrier of a price limitation for its patrons is something that I just think is so incredible. And I hope more people will adapt a model to get more people into the theater. I think it's because it can be a really incredible, I don't know, like, it makes my soul like go. So having more people being able to engage in this is something that I really am excited about.
Yes. So I always say you have to get more than one ticket because theater is more fun with a +1.
Yeah, there you
go. But here, you should just rope a bunch of people in, create a calendar
there
event.
You go.
Just invite everybody and then confirm those tickets.
Yeah.
Everybody get in the room, be part of the conversation. The production is Boycott Esther. It is written by Emily Acker. It is directed by Mara Krause. It is presented by Azuka Theatre Company. If you are listening to this, it is on stage now. So come be part of this conversation. Emily, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thank you so much. Really, it was a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Head on over to our website at www.broadstreetreview.com and click Get Involved at the top. While you're there, help keep us running and click Contribute to find out how. Connect with us on social media, on Facebook and Twitter at Broad Street Review. Thank you for helping to keep the conversation going.